Welcome to the newsroom. We're going to be breaking down 5 top news from today. First of all, being the Jeffrey Epstein's latest news report, latest released additional documents from the Jeffrey Epstein files. The latest batch was uploaded to the DOJ repository, where they can be accessed in datasets 9, 10, and 11, also 12. The tens of thousands of pages of material released so far have included photos, videos, court records, FBI and DOJ documents, news clippings, and emails. Some files include mentions of prominent figures like President Trump, former President Bill Clinton, and billionaire Elon Musk, who have not been tied to wrongdoing, according to them. Now, the Epstein Files Transparency Act required the DOJ to produce its files related to the late sex offender and his co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, by December 19 last year. But the DOJ said the volume of material and the need to redact survivors' identifying information meant the files would have to be released on a rolling basis. Now, we know some figures who have been identified to have used their connection with Jeffrey Epstein include Woody Allen and his wife, Soon-Yi Previn. They went on a trip to Washington, D.C. with the help of their friend, Jeffrey Epstein. They were able to tour the White House. Now, in 2015, Epstein used his connections to another friend who had been in President Barack Obama's administration to help the couple get a White House tour. White House records show that Allen, Previn, and Remler visited on December 27, a Sunday. Obama was then in Hawaii at the time. Included the documents are at least 10 pictures that appeared to show British politician Peter Mandelson as well, who was wearing a shirt and underwear without pants and holding a tablet while standing next to a woman or a girl wearing a robe in a hotel room or an apartment. There is also a photo of Mandelson standing in the same room without the women. Now, these kind of pictures have surfaced, and because of this, he has once again, Mandelson's connection to Epstein has come to the light, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer has issued that he did not know of, and he lied about these connections to the Epstein. Some countries have urged people to come forward, whoever has any connection with Epstein. Now, joining me is my colleague Ayanaba Banerjee, who is going to let us know more about the latest release.
Thank you, Asuma, for having me. The Epstein fallout is just getting bigger and bigger. Recently, the Department of Justice of the United States released more Epstein-related files. They released 3 million Epstein files, which sort of proved whatever everyone was thinking about the important leaders and the big names in the West as well as all over the world. A recent report that has come out states that former French Culture Minister Lang has been named in Epstein files. Now, according to these reports, Lang hung out with Epstein back in 2012 to 2019 before Epstein went to jail. And very interestingly, Epstein was convicted of soliciting minors for sexual abuse back in 2008. So Lang, the former French Minister Lang, decided to meet up with Epstein, decided to host dinner parties and attend dinner parties with Epstein. Now, when Lang was asked to comment on this, Lang stated that he did not know about Epstein's conviction before he met the sex offender. According to Lang, Epstein was just a common friend he met through the US director Woody Allen. Now, these are the claims being made by Lang. The French ministry, headed by President Emmanuel Macron, has already stated that they have asked Lang to come in and make a statement. We'll now get to see if investigation is taking place, which will, if that investigation will involve Lang or not. Adding on to it, the French ministry has also confirmed that they have debunked a disinformation based organization from Russia which tried to link Emmanuel Macron, French president, along with Epstein. So the French ministry says that now they have debunked it and they will be taking steps against these organizations and more of such organizations. Adding on to it, we already have seen the fallout of the Epstein files that is taking place in the United Kingdom, where the former UK ambassador to US, Peter Mandelson, was named in the files. There were reports of Peter Mandelson taking a lot of money from Epstein as well. According to reports, Peter Mandelson took almost $75,000 back in 2003 to 2004 from Epstein. The whole money was not directly transferred to Mandelson's account, but a part of them were sent to Mandelson's partner Ronaldo da Silva's account as well. Also, according to reports, back in 2009 and 2010, Epstein had also paid for an osteopathy course for Mandelson's partner, which cost almost 10,000 euros. Now, if we consider the inflation of now, the number will be over 21,000 US dollars. The amount will be over 21,000 US dollars. So that is how deep Mandelson is entrenched in the fallout of the Epstein files. We have already seen UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer making multiple apologies. The latest apology came in east of Sussex, where the Prime Minister was addressing media. He stated that he did not know the depth of connections between Mandelson and Epstein, but he did also acknowledge that he knew that there was a connection between Mandelson and Epstein. Apart from that, it just seems like the Epstein file, the fallout of the Epstein file will keep on going. There are many people, there are many famous personalities who have been named and who are now being investigated. Another name which has been making the rounds is of the Norwegian Princess Mette. The Norwegian princess has publicly apologized once again today, stating that she did not know about the conviction that Epstein was facing. She also said that she did not know the details of the charges that Epstein held. Apart from that, we have already talked about how the CEO of World Economic Forum, Brende, has also been named in the Epstein files. Now, according to reports, Brende used to attend dinners with Epstein. Back in 2018 to 2019, he apparently attended almost 3 dinners with the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. There was also another report that highlighted that there was a leaked email between Epstein and Brende, and in that email it was found that Epstein was basically talking about how Brent is a very important friend of his, and if someone has not been invited to the World Economic Forum, he can pull up a few strings and can get Brende, invite that particular person to the World Economic Forum. So this particular email that I'm alluding to refers to Larry Summers, the previous UK politician. Larry Summers had once emailed Epstein back in 2018-19 stating that he was not invited to the World Economic Forum, to which Epstein stated that. Yes, Asuma, back to you.
And Abba, thank you very much for sharing that. Please stay with us. We have another breaking news to take right now. A breaking news has come in that the United States has announced new sanctions to curb Iran's oil exports, including targeting 14 vessels moments after the adversaries wrapped up the day of indirect talks in Oman. President Donald Trump has said that he's committed to driving down the Iranian regime's illicit oil and petrochemical exports under the administration's maximum pressure campaign, State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott has said in a statement. Now we move on to Iran-US nuclear talks. Now today, Iran and US held indirect talks in Oman, Muscat, the capital of Oman, and Iranian state media has reported the conclusion of the latest round of nuclear negotiations with the US in Oman, with both delegations set to return to their respective capitals after they finished the negotiation. Now Iranian state media has reported that the talks with the US have concluded for now after several hours, but some media reports suggest that the talks were only held for 90 minutes. State-run news agency IRNA also confirmed that the end of latest round, noting that assessments indicate an understanding to continue the negotiations without any breakthrough. According to reports, during the session that began early today, the negotiating delegations of Iran and the US conveyed their respective views, considerations, and approaches to each other through Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi. This round has ended with another one expected to take place in the coming days. Iran and the US has resumed their indirect nuclear diplomacy today after weeks of heightened tensions fueled by both sides. Now we welcome back my colleague Ayanaba Banerjee. He's joining us to let us know more about the talks that have wrapped up. Ayanaba, what more can you tell us?
Yes. Asuma, first of all, you mentioned the breaking news. I think it's very important that we address that first. So, like you rightly said, US has sanctioned 15 entities, 14 vessels linked to Iranian oil transportation. Now, the US administration sanctioned vessels which are also known as the shadow fleet. Now, what is a shadow fleet? Shadow fleets are ships or vessels which are like 20 years old and they use multiple opportunities to evade sanctions that have been put on their host nations by the West. These vessels generally carry oil and other resources from states such as Iran, Venezuela, Russia, the states which are under huge sanctions by the West. Now what these shadow fleets do is that they switch off their identification markers, they use ship-to-ship transfer, which means that on sea they would transfer their natural resources that they are carrying to another sea to evade sanctions and to evade guards. So such ships and vessels have been targeted by US. Very interestingly, these new sanctions come literally hours after Iran and US finished their talks in Oman. Now, today in Oman, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and US diplomat Jared Kushner. Allegedly, these three leaders only talked about the nuclear program and nothing else. We do not know anything for sure because the details are not out yet. We are just waiting for the leaders to make an official statement based on the talks. What we know so far is that US made sure that the talks happen not just only based on the nuclear program of Iran, but also targeting the human rights abuse allegations in Iran and the ballistic missiles that Iran allegedly holds. But according to another report based off an Iranian media, the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi decided to stay clear from all of these discussions and only stay on point stay on the nuclear program related talks. This is what we know so far coming out of the talks. Now, there may be more rounds of talks in future, but we are not sure as of yet. No official confirmation has been made as of yet. It's also very important to highlight the fact that these talks are taking place after June of 2025, where 5 rounds of Iran-US nuclear talks had happened in Oman, after which, after the 5th round, US decided to bomb 3 nuclear facilities in Iran under what is called Operation Midnight Hammer. All the leaders, all the global leaders are just hoping that the talks lead to something substantial. Now, according to another media report, during the talk, Turkey's leader Erdogan had called up Qatar's President Al Thani. Both the leaders talked about how important it is for diplomacy to take its case, how important it is for diplomacy to come out surviving, and how important it is for the both sides to decide on an agreement which makes both the sides happy and feel respected. Back to you, Asuma.
Thank you, Ainaba, for giving us the brief and also the history of since last year of US and Iran talks. Thank you very much. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, moving on to US-Russia's expiring START treaty, which has expired yesterday. The US and Russia have agreed to re-establish high-level dialogue between their armed forces, but not for their nuclear START treaty for now. The announcement came after a meeting of senior US and Russian military officers in Abu Dhabi in the margins of talks about the war in Ukraine. In a statement, US-European Command has said renewed dialogue would provide consistent military-to-military contact as the parties work towards the lasting peace. This marks a significant rapprochement between the world's 2 largest nuclear powers and comes after President Donald Trump repeatedly voiced his desire to normalize relations between both countries. Now, the announcement also comes amid reports that the US and Russia are negotiating a deal to extend a nuclear arms reduction treaty, which has already expired yesterday. Throughout decades of crisis and confrontation, the US and Russia have often kept their channels of communication open between their armed forces. The aim was to avoid misunderstanding and escalation, but those contacts were suspended in 2021, shortly before Russia and Ukraine's war. Since then, there have been flashpoints involving Russian drones and warplanes entering NATO airspace and US unmanned aircrafts over Syria and the Black Sea. So they have reached this agreement. However, the New START treaty hasn't been signed yet, and they have expired, although Russia did offer US that they can extend it for a year, the same treaty, but US President Donald Trump said that there are some issues with that treaty, and in his words he has mentioned that it's incomplete, or it could have been better. So when President Trump says better, he means that they want to include China in this upcoming treaty as well, and we will be eyeing how US moves on with this particular treaty. Now we welcome back my colleague Ainaba Banerjee for this. Ainaba, what more can you tell us about this?
Yes, Asuma, like you rightfully mentioned, the New START treaty has officially expired on 5th of February. Now it's a very important treaty for all of our viewers who don't know that. Under this treaty, it was decided that US and Russia would be taking control of their nuclear stockpiles and they'll be reducing their numbers. Now, since a live treaty is not there anymore, there is no legal bondage of Russia or US to keep their nuclear stockpiles in check. The same emotion was reiterated by Antonio Guterres, the United Nations chief. He mentioned that it can be a very sorry state for the world if both the nations do not return to the diplomacy table as soon as possible. It's also very important to mention that US and Russia combined, they hold 80% of the world's nuclear stockpile. So it's very important for both the nation as well as the world to make sure that a legally binding treaty in terms of nuclear program, in terms of enrichment, in terms of stockpiles is present there. Adding on to it, previously Russia had suggested, Russian President Vladimir Putin himself had suggested that there can be a temporary extension of the treaty till the time both the sides come back on the table. But that statement, that viewpoint was rejected by the US President Donald Trump as well as State Secretary Marco Rubio, stating that they would require a new, more modernized treaty. In the latest, we have also found that the US administration has made statements saying that they would also want China to become a part of the treaty. Again, statements which China have rejected, stating very clearly that China do not have so much of nuclear stockpile as Russia or US does. So getting China involved in such a treaty is pure politics and nothing else. Back to you, Asuma.
Thank you very much, Ainaba, for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to EU and Russia. EU has targeted Russia once again with EU has targeted Russian energy, banks and goods and services in latest sanctions package. This is going to be their 20th package, aiming for a deal to be implemented then before Russia and Ukraine war enters its 5th year. So the European Commission has proposed its latest package of sanctions against Russia today in a package that broadens restrictions on Russian energy, banks, goods and services. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that as important peace talks are underway in Abu Dhabi, we must be clear-eyed. Russia will only come to the table with genuine intent if it is pressured to do so. And they think this is the only language that Russia understands. So this is the 20th package of Russia sanctions that includes a full maritime services ban for Russian crude oil and targets 43 more vessels as part of the so-called shadow fleet. It adds bans on the provision of maintenance and other services for LNG tankers and icebreakers to further dent gas export projects, a move that would stop them from using European ports. It also introduced new import bans on metals, chemicals, and critical minerals, as well as further export restrictions on items and technologies used for Russia's battlefield effort, such as materials used to produce explosives. The package lists 20 more Russian regional banks, as well as several banks in third countries that are perceived as facilitating trade in sanctioned goods. Von der Leyen said a drop of 24% in Russian oil and gas revenues last year to the lowest since 2020 confirmed that sanctions were working, and they have said that we will be continuing to use them until Russia engages in serious negotiations with Ukraine for a just and lasting peace. Now, EU countries would need to approve the package of the measures to take effect, with the goal set getting a deal over the line in time for the 4-year mark of Putin and Ukraine's war. The proposal comes on the heels of a round of trilateral talks between Ukrainian, American, Russian negotiators this week in Abu Dhabi, where Ukraine and Russia have agreed to swap 314 prisoners of war. Now that's a wrap for Newsroom. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates.